If anyone steps near my children while I am gone, Frankie, I want you to end them. No questions. No mercy. Carlos said it the way he said everything. Quiet. Final. The kind of voice that does not need volume because fear does the work instead. He was standing in the foyer of his house, a mansion on 17 acres of gated silence in the hills above the city, adjusting his cuffs while two armored SUVs idled in the driveway. Frankie nodded. Frankie always nodded. He had been Carlos' head of security for 11 years and had learned early that the job was not about asking questions. It was about making sure no one else ever needed to. The boys stay inside, Carlo continued. No visitors. No exceptions. Dolores handles meals. The new cameras go live the moment my car leaves the gate. Already done, boss. 36 units. Every room. Every hallway. Kitchen, nursery, staff quarters. Even the garden. Carlo looked at him. Even Reese's room? Even Reese's room. Carlo picked up his bag. He kissed his twin sons, Arlo and Gio, for years old, still in pajamas, still half asleep on Dolores's lap. The boys smelled like soap and warm milk. Arlo grabbed his collar and said, "Papa, come back." And something in Carlo's chest folded in a way that no enemy had ever managed to make it fold. "I will always come back for you," he said. "Always." He walked out. The SUVs pulled away. The gate closed. And as far as the world knew, Carlo Mancini was on a plane to Palermo, handling business that required his physical presence and his particular talent for making fear a currency. But Carlo was not going to Palermo. He was going to a rented apartment 4 miles from his own house, where 3 monitors were already set up, each one feeding live footage from every camera Frankie had installed inside the mansion. Because 2 weeks ago, a dying man had whispered something to Carlo that had planted a seed of fear so deep it had roots in every hour since. The man's name does not matter. He was a rival. He was bleeding out on a warehouse floor. And with his last breath, he had said, "You trust the wrong person in your house, Carlo. Someone close to your children. Someone you never watched because you never thought you needed to." Carlo had killed many men. He had destroyed families and dismantled empires and walked through rooms that smelled like copper and gunpowder without flinching. But fear, true fear, the kind that eats sleep and poisons thought, Carlo only felt that when it came to his sons. Arlo and Gio were everything. His wife had died during childbirth. Complications. The kind the doctors explained with words that sounded clinical and bloodless while Carlo stood in a hallway holding 2 newborns who would never know their mother's voice. Since that day, the boys were the only thing in Carlo's life that was not transactional. They were the only thing that made him feel fear. And fear made him dangerous. So he watched. Day 1. The monitors showed the house in perfect clarity. Dolores moved through the kitchen with her usual efficiency, preparing meals for the kids, barking orders at the junior staff, running the household the way she had for 6 years, like a general who happened to use dish soap instead of ammunition. Frankie patrolled the perimeter. The boys played in the nursery. Everything looked normal. And then there was Reese. Reese had been the nanny for 3 years. She was 31, quiet in a way that unnerved Carlo, not shy, but sealed, like a letter that had been written but never opened. She moved through the house like she was trying to leave no trace. She never looked Carlo in the eye. She never spoke unless spoken to. She cared for the boys with a gentleness that was almost painful to witness, reading to them, singing to them, holding them when they cried with a patience that suggested she understood something about loss that most people only learn once. Carlo had always found her strange. Dolores vouched for her. Frankie had run background checks that came back clean, but there was something behind Reese's silence that Carlo could not name, and what Carlo could not name, Carlo feared. On the monitor, he watched her tuck the children into bed. She sat between their small beds and told them a story about a fisherman who was afraid of the sea. Arlo asked why the fisherman was afraid. Reese said, "Because he loved someone who was lost in it." Then she turned off the light and closed the door and went to her room. And what Carlo saw next stopped his breathing. If this story already has you hooked, subscribe right now and drop a comment, because what Carlo sees on that camera is going to shatter everything he thinks he knows. Reese's room was small. A bed, a dresser, a wooden chair. The kind of room the house gave to staff who were expected to be grateful for a roof and not much else. Carlo had never been inside it. He had never thought about it. Reese was furniture to him. Background. A function, not a person. But on the monitor, Alone in that room, Reese became someone else entirely. She locked her door. She knelt beside her bed and pulled out a small wooden box from underneath the mattress. Her hands were shaking, not with fear, with something heavier. She opened the box and removed 3 photographs, each one creased and soft from years of handling. Carlo leaned toward the screen. The first photograph showed a little boy, maybe 5 years old, dark curly hair, laughing, sitting on a woman's lap in front of a house with yellow shutters. The second photograph showed a man, young, strong jaw, kind eyes. He was holding the same boy on his shoulders. The third photograph was a family portrait. The woman, the man, the boy, together, whole. Reese held the photographs against her chest and began to speak to them, softly. The microphone in the camera barely caught it, but Carlo turned the volume up until her voice filled the apartment. I am still here, Daniel. I am still here, Mijo. Mama is still here. I did not forget. I could never forget. She was crying. Not the dramatic kind. The quiet kind. The kind that comes from a place so deep inside a person that it bypasses sound altogether and expresses itself only through the body, through the trembling shoulders, the clenched jaw, the way her fingers pressed into the photographs, as if she could reach through time and touch the faces in them. Carlo stared. Then Reese did something that made his blood turn cold. She reached into the box again and pulled out a folded newspaper clipping, yellowed and fragile. She unfolded it. She looked at it, and she whispered, I forgive you. God help me, but I forgive you. Every day I forgive you. And every day it costs me everything. She was not talking to the photographs anymore. She was talking to Carlo. He could not read the clipping on the monitor. The resolution was not enough. But he called Frankie. The wooden box under Reese's bed. I need to know what is in it. Do not let her see you. Do not touch it. Just photograph everything and send it to me. Boss, is there a threat to the children? Just do it, Frankie. An hour later, the images arrived on Carlo's phone. The newspaper clipping was from 9 years ago, a small town outside Monterrey, Mexico. The headline read, in Spanish, 3 dead in cartel-related arson attack on family home. The article described how a house with yellow shutters had been burned to the ground in a dispute over territory. A man, 34, had been killed. A boy, 5, had been killed. A woman, 22, had survived with third-degree burns and had been hospitalized for 4 months. The territorial dispute had been ordered by a rising figure in the cross-border syndicate, a man consolidating power across the southern corridor, Carlo Mancini. He did not remember the order. That was the worst part. He had given so many orders like it that this one had not survived in his memory. It had been routine, collateral, a house that needed to be removed because it sat on a piece of geography that mattered to his supply chain. He had not known who lived there. He had not asked. The men he sent had not cared. A man and a boy had. Burned alive. And the woman who survived, the woman with the scars she kept hidden beneath long sleeves even in summer, was now sleeping 15 feet from his children. Fear flooded him. Not the strategic fear he used as a tool. Real fear. The fear of a father who suddenly understands that the person closest to his sons has every reason in the world to destroy them. He grabbed his phone. His thumb hovered over Frankie's number. 1 call and Frankie would remove Reese from the house within minutes. The boys would be safe. The threat would be neutralized. But something stopped him. He looked back at the monitor. Reese had put the photographs away. She was kneeling now beside her bed, her hands clasped, her eyes closed. She was praying. And then she stood, left her room, and walked down the hall to the kitchen. Carlo watched her prepare 2 small lunches for the next day. She cut the sandwiches into triangles because Arlo liked triangles. She packed apple slices with the skins removed because Gio did not like the skins. She wrote a small note and tucked it into each lunchbox. The note said, "You are loved. You are brave. You are not alone." She wrote those notes every single day. Carlo put the phone down. He did not call Frankie. Instead, he kept watching. For 2 more days, he watched Reese move through his house like a ghost carrying the weight of a grief he had caused. He watched her send money, nearly her entire paycheck, to an orphanage in Monterey through a wire transfer app on a phone so old its screen was cracked. He watched her clean the floors of his house on her knees, whispering prayers over the marble, as if she was trying to purify something that could not be purified. He watched her hold his boys when they had nightmares, rocking them with the same motion she must have used to rock her own son before Carlo's order turned him to ash. She had every reason to hurt his children. She had access, motive, opportunity. Revenge was right there, sleeping in twin beds with dinosaur sheets, and she chose instead to love them. That is when Carlo understood the truth. He was not watching a threat to his sons. He was watching a woman who had taken the ruins of everything he had destroyed and built something sacred out of them. She had converted her pain into protection, her grief into grace, her fear into a quiet, stubborn, holy refusal to become the monster that had made her. And Carlo, sitting in a dark apartment surrounded by surveillance equipment, watching a woman forgive him in real time, felt something he had not felt since the night his wife died. Shame. Now pause for a moment. If you feel what I feel right now, subscribe to this channel. Tell me in the comments, what would you do if you were Carlo? Because what happens when he walks back into that house is something I promise you will never forget. Carlo came home 2 days early. The SUVs pulled through the gate at dusk. Frankie was waiting at the front door of the house, his posture tight, scanning the driveway the way he always did, reading threat levels in the angle of approaching headlights. The boys heard the engine and came running, bare feet slapping against marble, shouting "Papa" in a duet that echoed off the vaulted ceiling of the foyer. Carlo knelt and caught them both. He held Arlo and Gio so tightly that Arlo squirmed and said, "Papa," too tight. But Carlo did not let go. He pressed his face into their hair and breathed them in. Soap and cereal, and the particular sweetness that belongs only to children who have not yet learned what the world is capable of. And he thought of another boy. A boy with dark curly hair who had been 5 years old and laughing on his mother's lap in a house with yellow shutters. That boy had smelled like this once. That boy was gone because of him. "Frankie," Carlo said, standing, his son still attached to his legs like small anchors. "Where is Reese?" "Kitchen, helping Dolores with dinner." "Send Dolores out. I want to speak with Reese alone." Frankie studied him. 11 years of service had given Frankie a limited but accurate ability to read Carlo's moods. What he saw now was something unfamiliar. Not anger. Not calculation. Something unarmored. "Boss, is there a problem?" "No, Frankie. There is no problem. Take the kids to the playroom." Frankie gathered the boys. Arlo protested. Gio went willingly because Gio was the quieter one, the one who observed, the one who would someday understand things about his father that Arlo would spend years denying. They disappeared down the hall. Carlo walked into the kitchen. Reese was at the counter, slicing vegetables with the precise, mechanical rhythm of someone who had learned to make her hands useful so that her mind could wander without breaking. She was wearing long sleeves. She was always wearing long sleeves. He knew why now. She heard him and turned. When she saw him, her body did what it always did in his presence. It contracted. Shoulders drew inward. Eyes dropped to the floor. She became smaller, not out of respect, but out of survival, the instinctive response of a person who has learned that powerful men are dangerous and visibility is a risk. He had mistaken that posture for suspicion, for secrecy, for something to fear. But it was not secrecy. It was fear. She was afraid of him. She had been afraid of him every single day for 3 years, and she had stayed anyway, because his children needed someone who knew what it meant to lose everything. Someone who would guard them with the ferocity of a mother whose own child was taken. Someone who understood that the only redemption available to her was to protect the sons of the man who had destroyed her son. "Reese," he said. "Yes, sir. I did not expect you back so soon. The children ate well while you were gone. Arlo had a small fever on Tuesday, but it broke by Wednesday morning. Dolores and I monitored it." Frankie was informed. "Reese." She stopped talking. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. "I know," he said. 2 words. He watched them land. He watched the color leave her face the way light leaves a room when someone closes the curtains. Her knuckles went white. Her breathing changed. "I know about the house in Monterey. I know about Daniel. I know about your son. I know what happened, and I know who ordered it." She was shaking now, not the subtle tremor from the surveillance footage. This was visible, full body, the kind of shaking that comes when the thing you have spent years containing finally threatens to rupture. "I watched the cameras, Reese. I saw the photographs. I saw you pray over my floors. I saw you write notes to my boys. I saw you send your money to that orphanage. I saw everything." A sound escaped her. Not a word. A sound. The sound a person makes when the wall they have built between themselves and their grief is struck so hard that the mortar cracks. "Why?" Carlo asked. "Why did you stay?" Why did you not take your revenge? You could have hurt my children. You could have exposed me. You could have sold what you know to my enemies. Frankie would not have caught you. Dolores would not have suspected. You had every opportunity. Why did you stay in this house and love my sons instead? Reese looked up at him. For the first time in 3 years, she looked directly into his eyes. And what Carlos saw there was not hatred. It was not forgiveness either. It was something between the two, something that exists in a place most people never visit because the rent is too high and the light is too harsh. Because they are children, she said. They are just children. They did not give the order. They did not light the fire. They did not choose their father. They are 4 years old, and they have nightmares and they call for their mother who is not there, and I know what it sounds like when a child calls for someone who will never come. I hear it every night. I have heard it for 9 years. Her voice broke, but she kept going. I came to this house to find you. I came to see the man who took everything from me. And when I arrived, I saw 2 boys who had also lost their mother. 2 boys in a house full of men with guns and fear, and not a single person who held them the way children need to be held. And I could not do it. I could not become you. I would rather carry this pain for the rest of my life than pass it to another child. Carlos stood in his own kitchen, in his own house, surrounded by everything his power had purchased, marble and security systems, and a man named Frankie who would kill on command, and none of it, not a single piece of it, could protect him from what he was feeling. Fear had built his empire. Fear kept his enemies at bay. Fear kept his children guarded behind walls and cameras and men with weapons. But fear could not touch what Reese had just done to him, because what she had given him was not punishment and not absolution. It was a mirror, and in it, he saw himself clearly for the first time. He saw a man who had ordered a house burned without asking who lived inside, a man who measured human life in geography and profit, a man whose sons were loved not because of who he was, but in spite of it, by a woman whose own son he had turned to memory. I cannot undo what I did, Carlos said. I know that. There is no amount of money. There is no apology large enough. Your son is gone, and your husband is gone, and I am the reason. I know, she whispered. But I am asking you something I have never asked anyone. I am asking you to stay. Not as staff. Not as the nanny. As someone this family owes a debt to that I will spend the rest of my life trying to repay. The boys love you, Reese. Arlo and Gio love you in a way they do not love anyone else in this house, including me. And I think you love them too. I do, she said, and the tears came fully now, the kind that wash rather than wound. Then stay, and let me face what I have done, not with fear, not with money, with whatever is left of the man I was before I became this. Reese stood in the kitchen of the house that belonged to the man who had destroyed her life. She looked at him. She looked through him. She looked at something beyond him that only she could see, perhaps Daniel, perhaps her son, perhaps the yellow shutters of a home that no longer existed except in 3 photographs kept in a wooden box beneath a bed. Your boys need a bath, she said quietly. Arlo will not wash behind his ears unless someone makes it a game. It was not forgiveness. It was not a transaction. It was a woman choosing, one more time, to answer cruelty with grace, not because Carlo deserved it, but because the children did. Because Arlo and Gio deserved a world where someone chose love over fear, even when fear was easier, even when fear was earned. Carlo nodded. He stepped aside. She walked past him, down the hall, toward the playroom where 2 boys were waiting. And Carlo stood alone in his kitchen, in the center of his empire of fear, and understood at last that the most powerful thing in his house had never been the security, the cameras, the gates, or Frankie. It was a woman with scars on her arms who chose every single day not to become the darkness that had been done to her. He picked up his phone. He dialed a number. A woman answered at an orphanage in Monterey. I want to make a donation, Carlos said. An anonymous, permanent endowment. Every child in your care. Education, housing, medical. Everything. For as long as the orphanage exists. Sir, that is, who is this? Nobody, Carlos said. Just someone paying a debt he can never finish paying. He hung up. Down the hall, he heard splashing. He heard Arlo shrieking with laughter. He heard Reese's voice, soft and steady, turning bath time into a game about a fisherman who was no longer afraid of the sea. Carlo listened, and for the first time in his life, fear was not the loudest thing in the room. Something else was. And that is where the story ends. But it does not have to end here for you and me. If this story touched something inside you, if it made you feel something real, then do me a favor. Subscribe to this channel. Hit that bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And drop a comment right now. Tell me, do you think Reese should have forgiven him? Or was staying the bravest thing she could have done? I read every single comment. And the next story is already waiting. Trust me, you are going to want to be here for it.